You're asking some heady questions. I mean, you know, I'm still, and this goes to the core of this conversation because we're still learning and evolving and learning and evolving.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And that's why we're going to talk with my friend Jeff. Jeff has had a lot of transformations. And transformations can be challenging, but transformations can be powerful. While you're going through them, they might be very hard. But when you come out of them, you're typically stronger. You're typically better. And if you have an open heart and an even wider mind, you might come out of those transformations more loving, even if those transformations are challenging in and of themselves. The courage to be more loving after heartbreak, I think, shows what is maybe the best of what men can offer. So we're so excited to have this conversation with my friend Jeff. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. Jeff Wilbur, welcome in.
Chris, I'm happy to be here, and I hope I can live up to that billing.
Actually, I think you'll surpass the billing. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
All right. With no script, my name is Jeff Wilbur. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I was born and raised in a suburb of Cleveland in a middle-class neighborhood to a blue-collar parenthood. My dad was a foreman in a manufacturing plant, and my mom was in retail selling home furnishings. I graduated from a public high school and went into the Navy immediately. All my friends from high school went off to their respective colleges, and I went off to the Navy. And I was in the Navy for some very formative years, from 18 to about 27, and was unceremoniously separated from the Navy at that point. Went to college, San Diego State, met a girl, got married, had some babies, had some detours. I'm no longer married to that woman, and live a single life here in San Diego, California, with my two grown children, semi-grown. My son's 18, my daughter's 20. She's at college. He's figuring out his next step, which college he'll go to. And I'm in the finance industry, and that is a high-level look at me.
That's fantastic. I love the abridged version of your life stories. And so many of those chapters you were talking about had these milestones, right? The first milestone, I think, is leaving Cleveland. And I would have to say that, from your experience, it seems to me that you pulled yourself out of Cleveland instead of getting pushed out, by meaning your choice to join the Navy uprooted you and took you out of your growing up experience. Is that kind of fair to say, that you chose to leave?
For sure. That's correct. My parents weren't God loved them. I loved them, but they weren't the healthiest folks. And my choices to that point, when I had graduated from high school, weren't placing me on the best trajectory. And I had the self-awareness to know that a change was necessary. So without any other apparent option, we didn't have money for college, and I probably wasn't ready for it. I enlisted in the military to get a change of scenery, and the best laid plans. I really left the frying pan and entered the fire unwittingly, but by design, it was a good. It was well thought out.
It's interesting that you leave a frying pan, go into a fire. There are discontents and there are issues with growing up, and then you kind of hope to leave some of that behind, but then you confront brand new issues, right? And so when you left Cleveland, did you ever think that you would go back to Cleveland when you left? And the reason I ask is I grew up in Pittsburgh, right? Similar kind of city, mid-sized, and it was a great place to grow up. But when I left, well, I just never imagined me staying there and going back. When you left for the Navy, did you think that that was it?
I don't know if I knew. I don't, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever thought about that. When I left, did I imagine that I would go back there? It's interesting because after I left, I would go back there on leave, and my people would constantly be asking me when I was coming, quote, home. And it wasn't long before I started letting those people know that when I was in California, I was home, and that had become my home. That was a transition for me that was definitely locked in probably after about 5 years or so, though. I mean, I still, like you, I still have dear friends and family in Cleveland, but it wasn't long before I knew I wasn't going back.
And when you went back to see them and you knew you were not going back, did you feel like you were elite, like an other, that they had made a choice to stay, you had made a choice to leave, and ne'er the twain shall meet?
An outsider, if you will. I mean, that sensation grew over time and was hit with an exclamation point when I went back for my 20-year high school reunion, and it was amazing and wonderful. I love my people in Fairview Park, Ohio, from where I came. I love them, but it was amazing to me how the identities of so many of us take the Breakfast Club, the jock, the nerd, the everyone was still in their role at my 20-year high school reunion. It was a time warp. I didn't know if 20 minutes had passed or 20 years.
So I got to ask then, Jeff, in that analogy, what was your role? And were you that same role when you came back after all of your travels and your growing up?
Well, we haven't gotten to it in this discussion yet, but Chris, substance abuse was a big part of my sort of not my adolescence, but my high school and then my days in the military. I drank too much and I
Hmm.
drugged too much, and by the time I had gotten to my 20-year high school reunion, I had had the proverbial kick that I needed, which was when I was separated from the military for substance abuse. And that was the kick that I needed when I needed it, and was the impetus for the almost 30 years of sobriety I have today, which is unthinkable. So
Congratulations, but congratulations on that.
thank you. Um, and so in that way, I was different from the people there. One more time, God bless them all. I don't, there's no judgment. Everyone's living their journey, and mine changed. Um, what's the word you say? Inexorably.
That's right. It did.
When I was separated from the military, my path forward took a significant turn, and the vast majority of my people in Ohio took no such turn. So that separated my identity from theirs, but still there was the love and the bond of having grown up in the same area together, and that was wonderful. But I was different on that basis.
Sure. And the kind of the way I see it playing out is as a storyline, it's your choice to leave Cleveland and enter the military. And however experiences projected you through and kind of shocked you through into a state of, now lifelong sobriety afterwards, irrevocably changed your trajectory versus the people who were there. And so I guess a question now is, you look at that guy who was in high school before on the cusp of leaving. What would you say to that guy if you had a chance to yik-yak and have a cup of coffee or something? What would you say to him?
To thine own self be true, right? I mean, that is such a fundamental practice. Each of us has to be ourselves. And golly, that evolution of being kicked out of the military was so extremely formative for me that I mean, if I could have a talk with myself, and I would probably steer myself to a different behavioral trail, which might subvert that eventual crucible that I went to in getting out of
Right.
the military. And it was so massively formative for me. It should probably be unpacked a little bit further, because when I tested positive for methamphetamine, I wasn't the first one from my tribe to go through that. And most of the guys that went through it before me lied and said that they didn't do those things. And when it came my turn to do that, I had a moment of clarity where I just knew that I had to own it, and so
Yeah.
within the chain of command of the military area that I was assigned to, I had some people that I was close to, and I went and told them, I have to own this. I can't deny that I did this. I did this. I did this. And
Mm-hmm.
they saw that, and they respected that very tough decision and confrontation that I was having with myself. And it was from there it was, there was honor. There was honor. The
Mm-hmm.
commanding officer told me I was, if he could make an exception, I'd be the one that he would make it for, but his hands were tied. And so I was separated
Sure.
from the military. But man, what an incredibly formative incident that was for me in the fabric of who I am since then and today. It had to happen. So I'd have probably just told myself to be myself and do my thing and do right by folks.
Sure. And I think it's a theory I can't prove, but I think that there is a survival instinct in people. And the core survival instinct is yourself. It's the one thing you can't lose. Another guest will have my buddy Michael Rosenthal. He says, no one's going to love you as much as you love yourself. No one's going to take care of you the way you want to take care of yourself, hopefully. And there's this survival instinct that I think you had where you knew at that moment you had to survive to be yourself and you had to tell the truth. By not telling the truth, you would have lost who you were.
Exactly. I remember I had the epiphany that I I had already lost the thing that I valued, which was the respect of my peers. That was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wanted to
Mm.
lie and deny that I had done this substance, I might be able to squeak by and stay in the military, but every single person that I worked with would know that I lied.
Right.
And I would never get the
Right.
respect back, which in retrospect was the thing that I had that I valued. So,
Right.
but you touch on something else, which is loving yourself. And your friend Mike says that no one will love me like I love me. Well, Chris, I hope so. I mean, self-love is another thing, and it's certainly worth pondering. The importance and
Yeah.
and the and how can you love someone else unless you love yourself first?
Yeah, I think that is an age old question, and where I was thinking about it for you was there was this moment of real self-love, knowing that you would take advantage of this shock to get to acknowledge the issue, and then knowing that you would be exited from the military, went on a path of complete sobriety. And one question I have, because in our family alcoholism runs deep. Like both of my grandparents on my maternal and my paternal side were like old school alcoholics, and it created, killed them and created a whole host of problems. And so my dad was a teetotaler his whole life. He never had alcohol. Every time he had a little whiff or a sip, he got migraine headaches. Like, it was probably psychosomatic, because he was terrified of his own dad during those alcoholic issues. Did alcoholism or addiction run in your family? Did you think that was something that you were prone to in your high school years?
100%. My parents were old school alcoholics. 1/5 a day and 3 packs of cigarettes to complement it every day. So and this has its footings in why I felt the need to get out of Dodge when I graduated from high school, because I didn't want that lifestyle for myself. I was on my way to that lifestyle even at that tender young age of 18 years old. And as I mentioned, out of the frying pan into the fire, I left my friends that I went to high school with, and I joined the Navy, and I found my new set of friends with whom I could continue down that path, if anything, at an accelerated rate. So that when I got to that point where I was going to be separated from the military, the Navy does this thing where they attempt to determine if they contributed to this problem that you have. They want to ask you, when you were growing up, was there alcoholism in your family? And they also ask a lot of questions about, how much do you drink? How much do you drink a week? Do you black out drink? And Chris, I remember that in answering every one of their quiz questions, I discounted my behavior by half.
Wow.
How many times a week do you drink? Oh, in my mind, I'm like, well, every single day. And how much do you drink? And, I would have that. Do you black out drink? And I would 50% discount that. And at the end of the Q&A session, the counselor said, well, Jeff, if you're not an alcoholic today, you're certainly well on your way. And then fate stepped in, and in the process of being separated from the military, I was sent to the recycling center on Station North Island, and we dumpster dove there. In case you're curious what that looks like, Chris, you drive around in a van and you go from dumpster to dumpster, and you go into the dumpsters and attempt to recover anything that's recyclable in that dumpster. So that's how I spent 6 months of being out processed from the military. But while I was there, I met a couple of guys who themselves were in the program, that were in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they were young guys. They were cool, funny guys. So they were the kinds of guys that I needed to meet at that point in my life, so that conversations around recovery and sobriety could land on my frontal lobe in a manner that I could hear them. It couldn't be an old person or anyone that I wouldn't be able to identify. This was basically me that was in AA. And they would invite me to meetings. And finally I gave in and I said, I'll go to this meeting with you, but I'm not saying I'm an alcoholic. And we went to the meeting, and of course I stood up and said I was an alcoholic. And that was July 27th, 1994.
What a day.
And I haven't drank since then. What a day.
What a day. And congratulations on that, by the way. And again, I think sometimes, again, another theory I can't prove, the universe conspires for you and puts people in place if you're open to it. There's a definition of serendipity, I think, where they say it's the opportunity and the awareness come into play. It's not really luck, it's a moment. But you were at that time where if you had met those guys 3 years before, you wouldn't be ready for them. But you were ready for them then, and they came in at that time. And because they were of age of yours, I can see how that's so much more relatable to see as they were going through their journey. And I guess a question I would have is you were kind of a younger man. Alcoholism addiction runs in your family like it does ours. So when my girls were younger, I told them the story all the time. I said, gang, it runs in our family. We've got to be super careful, right? I put limits for myself because I have to. You've got children who are college age. Their exposure to alcohol is unavoidable. What have you shared about your story of choosing sobriety, and what kind of, I wouldn't say warnings, or what kind of cautions do you talk to them about as they need to caretake because it's a genetic issue?
As in so many instances, I probably haven't put as fine a point on this with them as I should. What I lay back on is they've never seen me using. They've never seen me drink ever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they certainly know that I'm an alcoholic. They certainly know that my parents were alcoholics. So they're aware of the issues and the trap doors that are in front of them. And I suppose I'm reserving the sermonizing for if and when it becomes apparent that it's needed. My daughter's at Berkeley, and certainly there's some imbibing going on up there, but I haven't seen any warning signs that she needs any coaching on this front. She's fairly
That's great.
square, so I think that through inference, my children understand the game and they understand their genetic makeup, and I will be providing first person coaching as they, really get into the age where this will become something that they'll be confronted with.
I'll be to pay attention to. Now, can I ask, is your dad still alive?
Negative. Both my parents are passed away. They both died
Both
in
dead.
their, my mom, God bless my mom and my dad, but my mom's family is the genetic stream through which the alcoholism got to us. She brought it,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad became an alcoholic because he was in a relationship with my mom who was genetically predisposed to alcoholism. So they became alcoholics
Sure.
together, and it came and got them. The fifth and the 3 packs of smokes, not surprisingly, came and got them both in their mid-50s.
Wow, in their mid 50s. So you just turned 57.
Yes, sir. I outlived my dad's age already.
You already,
Yeah.
already you've outlived your parents.
Yep.
And, I think that, does it make you think about the years lost that they didn't have, and perhaps, years gained that you have?
Mm, of those two, I certainly focus more on the years lost for them. It's sad for me, that they weren't there for my wedding, and they're obviously
Mm-hmm.
not around for my children. So that's profoundly sad that I wasn't able to watch my parents grow old in a more natural way and have all the trappings that come from having parents who have wisdom and so forth.
We'll be right back. Yeah, I think it's a challenge when your parents get older and you get older too. So I'm of age as well, just turned 54. And my dad had a stroke about 20 years ago, so completely changed the man that he became. And so as I got older, didn't necessarily have what I would call a model of manhood through mature years
Mm-hmm.
in my father. I
Mm-hmm.
had to seek it elsewhere, right? I
Mm-hmm.
had to seek out other people who might be older than me
Mm-hmm.
and ask them. One thing that's beautiful about not only the friendship you and I have, Jeff, but we have a collection of fellas. We call them our Urslings, right? We have about 20 fellas, a variety of ages. And I think that's really, well, and not I think, I know that that has made all the difference in my adult life in terms of going through transitions. And I remember meeting you when we first got together with folks and you were married. And I remember going through your divorce as a friend. I mean, heck, I helped you move. Um, right. And at the time, I got to be honest with you, I didn't share this with you because we were kind of getting through the operations of it all. Right. But I was so angry with your ex. I, I really was. So my folks split when I was 5. And they went through subsequent marriages and divorces. And I had a whole bunch of step siblings come in and out. And I probably tried my best to see my dad as he was going through that, or my mom as their own people, but I wasn't old enough. I wasn't equipped enough to do that. And I was really just thinking about getting it through myself, and my brother was getting it through his self. And we were trying to figure out the dynamics of all these families coming in and out. But I just remember my feeling at that time. And I didn't even ask you if you were angry, if what you were going through. And so I don't know, and I don't also too, when you talk to your kids, especially your son, do you talk about those feelings that you were going through and that shocking transition?
Well, Chris, the notion that the enemies of my friends are my enemies is as old as the hills. So it's natural that you and many, many others from my tribe were off put by the choices and directions being chosen by my now ex-wife. So that's all very natural. And but in the final analysis, I'm of the opinion that that was the right thing for she and I to do. For as she pointed out in the offing, she said, "You're not happy. I'm not happy. Let's go get happy." I remember her saying that to me, and so I
Mm,
forgive her for that. And as you know, she and I have a very civil relationship today. As it relates to conversations between me and my kids about this, I think this is a little bit like the alcoholism topic. I feel like both of them have full awareness of how everyone feels about this arrangement, and they always have, because they've been front and center for it. They were, Chris, and looking back, my now ex-wife Chelsea wanted a divorce. I did not want a divorce, and I did not want a divorce for the single reason that I did not want to have a conversation with my 8-year-old son about how I was moving out, because I knew it was going to break his heart, and it certainly was breaking my heart. And it lived up to its billing
sure.
1000% when eventually we had that conversation. It was very, very emotional, very, very trying. But when I moved out, I just moved up the block so that I could walk to where they lived, they could walk to where I lived, and they were, like in any healthy parent-child relationship, and still are, like the center of my life. And they know that, and
Hmm.
I know that, and they feel that from the communication that we have, I hope. But everyone knew how everyone was going to feel. And it was tough for me, but I remember I was talking to a therapist about it, and he said, this is going to be your opportunity to show your daughter and your son how a man acts when he's not getting what he wants. And that struck
Right.
a chord with me. And so it became my model. to be loving and respectful to everyone as we went through that very, very challenging evolution.
Yeah, it's astonishing. It was, the maturity that you showed. I have to believe that your transformation to sobriety had a piece of how you responded to that kind of adversity. You do have a daughter, you do have a son. Your model of manhood emulates differently, right? You're probably trying to emulate a model of manhood for your son to look up to and live up to and to hopefully be a model for him. And for your daughter, though, it may be the spouse that she would choose or a partner that she would choose. Do you think about that differently? And it seems like you thought about that differently during this process.
Absolutely. And for my daughter, what she got to see is she got to see a woman, her mom, manage a relationship with a man, her dad, that preserved her dignity and and in that evolution, Chelsea modeled being assertive about your own right within a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And then she was able to see what would be a reasonable response to that assertion of rights by the man on the other side, even if he didn't agree with it or wasn't happy about it. This is daughter, this is how a man should act, and this is how you should act on behalf of yourself, how her mom acted. And this is how a man should react when you're acting on your own behalf and in your own
Wow.
right.
I think that is extraordinary co-parenting. And you don't have to be married to be co-parents. My folks were not the greatest co-parents. It was two different worlds that I was living in when I was with one or the other. They didn't really team up in that way. They did their best, but at the same time, they were younger. I was younger um, when all that stuff went down. So I don't think they handled it with that kind of maturity. So good on you and good on your ex for doing that, because you both just saw a co-parenting moment. And now that you look back on that, Jeff, that was what, 10 years ago, 8 years ago ish, about 10
Eight,
years.
6 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so now that you've gone through that passage a bit, if you could have a yik-yak with that guy as we were moving furniture, what would you say to him?
The same thing I would say to me today. It's like what Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And I have a good friend that who cares about me in the manner that you do and all of our other man friends do. We all care about each other. He has a real care for me. And he, put his arm around me and said, dude, it's going to take you 3 years to move into your full new identity as a single man, no longer married to this woman, certainly still father to these children, but this is going to be a new identity. And it's probably going to take you 3 years to get into it. And in the course of those 3 years, the only thing you're going to think is, I wish I had done this sooner. And I think that's
Hmm.
the sensation that everyone experiences when they're coming out of a failed marriage. I mean, we kept trying to pump air into this thing, not knowing it had a gigantic hole on the other side that would never hold air.
Sure.
So, what would I say? There's there's a bright future out there for you. Be a man.
Right. Right. And I think that the idea sometimes is, sometimes the only way through something is through it. Right? You
Yep.
can't avoid it. You can't duck it. You've got to go through it, through all of the brambles and whatever analogy or metaphor you want to use. But through it is the only way. And so coming out of that now, um, one of the things I'm curious about is how you handle this beautiful, expansive, open plains of singlehood as a more mature man. right? I haven't, as you know, I've been married a long time. I haven't been single in a long time. I was a totally different man back in the day when I was single. And I have to share this experience of coming to your house, right? And your house is beautiful. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
And I go into your garage, and I think I mentioned it when I first went in, my jaw dropped because it was really a man's garage. You have a motorcycle, you've got a little Boston Whaler out on the curb, you got a snowboard, you got a surfboard, you got this vintage 1970s GTO, and you're working on it, and you've got like the Mr. Miyagi of vintage cars as a neighbor to help you overhaul stuff, right? And I was really struck with just the sheer manliness of it, right? But also the authenticity. And you said something I'll never forget. You said, well, the side benefit is divorce is that I kind of get to do the things I want to, kind of get to be the guy I want to be. And I found that really profound. And I guess it's almost as if now you're able to be free to be the man you choose to be, maybe instead of the man that you think you're supposed to be when you're in a marriage. Can you talk to me about that? Are you becoming more of this man that you want to be and truly are?
We all want what we don't have, you know? So when I became single, that was when I was able to be reactionary to all the things that I wanted that I didn't have when I wasn't single. And that's why my man toy box looks the way it does, because I was able to, go get this and go get that. And make no mistake, I love all those things that you mentioned. But Chris, as you know, those are all just things. And, what I really want now as a single man is love, right? I
Right.
mean, that's what human beings want is love. And, I'm not a boy anymore, so I'm not out philandering and chasing voluminous amounts of women. I am seeking love, and that's what I want. I want a woman partner. Um, that's what I want.
Yeah. Well, you deserve it. I also know that a woman that is open to sharing your love and giving love to you will be better for it. I think that you've got so much to give. And I think that, as I get older, even through all the 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 foundation that I'm still trying to build with our family and preserve and to hold on to. And we're going through our own transitions as a couple that our kids have moved out, right? So we're kind of reconnecting as couplehood. I'm also trying to figure out how I will get back to the core person that I was before I learned so much, right? One of my favorite phrases from Picasso, he was about, he's an older guy and he's looking at these kids who were 9 years old and they were drawing. And he said, when I was their age, I could draw like Raphael, but it took me a lifetime to draw like them, right? To get back to that core childhood. And so I think about myself when I was 5, and it's kind of when you're still thinking, you're aware of stuff, but you haven't been put on with the expectations, right? You haven't been put on with the you shoulds and seeing how other people live, and you're really at your core self. When I see you now, kind of living this singlehood life where you're mature enough to know who you are, wise enough to know the boundaries, but get back to that core 5-year-old self, are you acting more true to your nature now than you were before? And is that different than you were a younger single man?
You're asking some heady questions. I mean, I'm still, I mean, and this goes to the core of this conversation because we're still learning and evolving and learning and evolving. I'm working, Chris, on mindfulness, being present in the present moment as opposed to constantly living in the past or constantly fretting about the future. I'm trying to live in the moment. So I don't know if I'll connect back to my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be true to the person that I am today. And I have a new concept that I'm working on. We made reference to it earlier, and that's loving myself. So I'm trying to make sure that I love myself and that I know that I love myself and that I say to myself, I love you. It's an important thing, and it's something, and it's
Mhm.
probably for a lot of people that's a silly topic, but it resonates for me because I say, do I love myself? And I have to pull over and think about it for a second. So that's really the aspect of my identity that I'm focused on right now, is making sure that I'm good with myself and that I accept myself with all the things that have happened in my life and that I love myself.
That's outstanding. I think that that's harder than people think. We all see our faults. I all the shortcomings that we are as people. And I think that when someone says, well, what defines a successful man? I was like, well, is it salary? Oh no, I know a lot of a-holes who have a lot of salary and they're not really successful men. Um, is it a sense of awareness? Is it that place of loving yourself? Is that place of being present? I think also too, Jeff, it helps you be more open to new things, right? If you are focused on loving yourself, you're focused on exploration, and you said learning and evolving. One of the recent transformations that I'd love you to talk about, which I find so inspirational, and I'm just knocked out that you can do this, is the choices you made to become an ultra racer. And you had done marathons before and the like, but moving to an ultra level of distance is something that's takes an extraordinary amount of commitment and I think a real place of being present, right? You have to figure out during those races what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I've seen you transform physically, but also mentally and almost from I don't know, I won't call it an emotional stability, but there's a groundedness that's different in you now since you've started these ultras, kind of a more purposeful approach to how you greet every day. And I don't know if that's true if you think that, but it's how I'm seeing it.
I thank you. I think Chris, I don't know how much the ultra behavior has to do with the evolution of my tenor. It's been a lot of fun, and we have a friend in common who's the godfather of ultra marathons for me in San Diego where we live, and he's someone that I've ran with forever. And 18 months ago, I agreed to do a 50K. And when I did that, I looked him in his eyeballs and told him I would never do a 100 mile. And the ultra addiction got its hooks into me. And I've done 6 or 7 ultra marathons now, and I'm signed up for a 100-mile ultra marathon later this year. And the amount of time that you spend running trails with and without other people provides an abundance of time for you to get your head together on whatever other things are going on in your life. It gives you plenty of time to think about it, and it gives you a good platform for positive and healthy thinking and self feedback, which lead to a more favorable outcome, I think. And all the while asking yourself, what can I do? How far can I go? How long can I go? And then having those successes and not successes along the way has been a wonderful journey. But I really think the mellowing of my personality is happening on a parallel track as I get old and enter into and exit human relations and learn about myself and others, shortcomings, things I could have done better, self-analysis, probably trying to look at myself and be careful to not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sounds a little bit to me like some wisdom, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
that you're accumulating with what you're experiencing and how you're living. So I guess I got some last questions for you. Who is someone I don't know that you know that I should meet?
You should meet my buddy Russ. He's the one that told me that it would take me 3 years to move into my new identity as a single man. And I know him through a public speaking club that I'm in here in San Diego. And he has been a friend of mine as long as you have. And he is wise. He's got you and me by 20 years or so, but he's a thoughtful, mischievous, funny, and intelligent man. His name is Russ. I'll introduce you.
Wonderful. I'd love to meet Russ. Um, who is someone you would like to meet? Anyone.
Hmm.
Who would you like to meet
Oh,
face to face?
I want to meet Mike Tyson. I'm inspired by your recent interaction with him, and it's amazing. Look where Mike Tyson is in society, and look where Mike Tyson came from, and look who he is. And is there a bigger shocker of a profoundly thoughtful man within our pop culture than Mike Tyson?
Maybe not. He was amazing. Just I got to see him speak, and one thing that was astonishing was how he goes through his own purpose. Right? He thinks that that God has a plan for him, and he's following God's plan. Of course, he also
Hmm.
says there's one step between a Rolls Royce and the gutter, which is true, both
Hmm.
metaphorically and literally. That's
Hmm.
excellent. Another question I have is, let's say you got 30 seconds of a TikTok video and you have to get a chance to broadcast a message to the whole world. What would you say?
One message that I think is worth repeating is this notion of 20 years from right now, you would give anything to be in this day, have these things that you have this group of friends that you have, and most importantly, have the health that you have today. So pull over and take a moment to acknowledge the gifts that you have today, most notably your health, without which we have nothing, and be present and grateful for what you have today.
Wonderful. I love that. I love that. And I love you, right?
I
I'm
love
so
you, man.
grateful for this conversation. You've got, such an open heart, and you were so generous with your time and your thoughts and your feelings. And oh man, I just so appreciate you. Man, so glad you could make time for this. I love you and have a wonderful day.
Chris, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Wow. What a conversation. What a man. One thing I love about Jeff is his open heartedness and his bravery of being so vulnerable and humble and wise and willing to share his thoughts and his experiences. We don't share it enough. I know guys who bottle things up, keep it tight, have a hard time sharing with other people what they're going through, what they're feeling. It's not good. It doesn't help. Also, too, you'll notice it's two guys in their 50s who like women, but we can express love for each other. Fraternal love. It's good. It's very good. There's a guy that you know who's an important part of your life. Let him know that you love him. Why not? What's the harm? You express that. They know that they've got someone in their corner. They know that they're loved. And for men to have that kind of camaraderie is so vital. I've had the blessings of being involved with my Urslings, 20 of us guys growing up together, talking, bullshitting, yik-yakking, sharing thoughts, being there for one another. It's made all the difference in my adulthood, and I wish the same for you. So what I would like you to do, if you like this episode, which I hope you did, go to menfolkjourneys.com. menfolkjourneys.com. Go down to the bottom of the form, give us some comments. Let us know what we're doing well, and let me know what we could do better. And fill out the form if you're going to be a guest. I'd love to hear your wisdom, love to hear your stories, and have conversations with you about what you're going through, so you can help other men go through their stuff too. Look, everybody's got shite that they've got to go through, and we just do it better when we can do it together. All right, menfolkjourneys.com. I look forward to speaking with you, and I can't wait to have more conversations. Weird bid Falared.